Do you know avoidants depend on your effort to stabilize the relationship? They depend on you to bridge the emotional gap, soothe the disconnection, and carry the responsibility of connection. That's why when you stop doing all of that, the pattern breaks. Suddenly there's no emotional cushion, no one to chase, no one to reassure them, and the loss of that comfort forces them to confront the possibility of losing you. Doing nothing interrupts their emotional autopilot, and that interruption is what makes them feel. And the reason why it finally makes them feel is because for the first time, you're not managing their avoidance for them, which means they have to experience the full weight of distance they've been creating, and that weight becomes unbearable in a way your pursuit never was. Think about how the dynamic usually works. You text first, you initiate plans, you bring up important conversations, you're the one monitoring the emotional temperature of the relationship and adjusting your behavior to keep him comfortable. Your energy creates a safety net that allows him to be distant without ever experiencing the consequences of that distance. He gets the benefit of your presence and care without the discomfort of facing his own emotional unavailability. But when you stop doing all of that, when you stop texting first, stop initiating connection, stop managing his comfort, something shifts. The relationship that felt stable because of your effort suddenly feels unstable, and that instability isn't something he can ignore or avoid. It forces him to feel the reality of what's happening. He's losing you not because you're chasing too hard, but because you've stopped chasing at all. And that absence of pursuit creates a psychological crisis that your presence never could. Most women think they need to do more to make an avoidant man fall in love. More patience, more understanding, more accommodation of his needs. But the truth is the opposite. Avoidants don't fall in love when you do more, they fall in love when you do nothing. When you remove yourself from the role of emotional manager and let him experience the natural consequences of his distance, his entire nervous system has to recalibrate. And in that recalibration, desire returns not because you convinced him to want you, but because the absence of your effort revealed what he's about to lose. Hi, I'm Gabriel Hart from MyDailyLove, and in this video we'll talk about why doing nothing makes avoidants fall in love with you. Number 1, your non-reaction doesn't activate their fear system. The most powerful aspect of doing nothing is that your non-reaction doesn't activate his fear system, and avoidants fall in love when they feel safe, not when they feel pressured, because pressure equals fear, while calm neutrality equals safety. When you pursue, question, or express disappointment, you activate his threat response. His nervous system reads your emotional intensity, even when it's coming from a place of legitimate need, as danger. Not logical danger, but primal danger, the kind that makes his body want to flee before his mind can even process what's happening. Your pursuit becomes associated with overwhelm, and overwhelm triggers avoidance. But when you do nothing, when you respond to his distance with calm neutrality instead of emotional reaction, something different happens. His nervous system doesn't go into defense mode. There's no threat to escape from, no pressure to resist, no emotional intensity to manage. The absence of activation creates space where something other than fear can exist, and in that space, curiosity can emerge, interest can surface, even desire can return. Think of it like approaching a wild animal. If you chase it, it runs. If you corner it, it attacks or freezes. But if you simply exist in its environment without threat, without pursuit, just calmly being present, it might eventually approach you out of its own curiosity. Avoidants operate on similar nervous system principles. They can't move toward what feels like it's chasing them. They can only move toward what feels safe. Your non-reaction communicates something his nervous system has rarely experienced. You're not going to punish him for his patterns. You're not going to demand he be different. You're not going to create crisis around his distance. That absence of threat is what allows his guard to drop. And when his guard drops, the feelings he's been defending against can finally surface. From what I've seen, women often misunderstand this as playing games or being cold. But it's not about manipulation. It's about refusing to activate his fear response with your emotional intensity. It's about creating an environment where he can feel his actual feelings instead of just feeling the need to escape your pursuit. The calm you maintain becomes the container in which his real emotions can finally emerge without triggering his defenses. The key is that your neutrality has to be genuine. If you're seething with resentment while pretending to be calm, he'll feel that. If you're withdrawing as punishment, that's still pressure, just passive-aggressive pressure. But if you've genuinely detached from the outcome and are simply existing in your own peace regardless of his choices, that energetic shift changes everything. His nervous system recognizes the difference between strategic silence and authentic self-possession. Number 2, you don't chase, so they don't run. Here's what most women don't realize about the pursue-withdraw dynamic. The moment you don't pursue, his nervous system relaxes, and when his nervous system relaxes, desire returns naturally, because the biological drive to run only exists when there's something chasing him. The pursue-withdraw cycle is a feedback loop. You pursue because he withdraws. He withdraws because you pursue. Each action reinforces the other, creating a pattern neither of you can escape as long as both of you keep playing your assigned roles. Your pursuit justifies his withdrawal. His withdrawal triggers your pursuit. The cycle perpetuates itself indefinitely, but when you stop chasing, the entire dynamic collapses. There's no one pursuing, which means there's no reason to run. The nervous system signal that says threat approaching, create distance, never gets activated. And in the absence of that threat signal, something else can emerge. The natural human desire for connection that exists underneath all the defensive patterns. Think of it like a game of tag. As long as someone is chasing you, your only focus is running away. Your entire being is oriented toward escape. But the moment the chase stops, you can stop running. And when you stop running, you can actually look around and assess whether you want to be where you are or not. Avoidants are the same. They can't evaluate their feelings for you while they're in flight mode. They can only evaluate their feelings when the chase stops and their nervous system calms down enough to feel something other than the need to escape. This is why doing nothing is so powerful. You're not giving him what he expects, which is pursuit that justifies his withdrawal. You're creating a completely different environment where his old patterns don't fit. He's conditioned to run from chase, but there's no chase. He's conditioned to resist pressure, but there's no pressure. His autopilot doesn't have a script for this scenario, which forces him to be present and conscious instead of reactive and defensive. Watch what happens when you stop initiating. At first, there might be nothing. He might not even notice immediately because he's so used to you carrying the connection. But then, after a few days or a week, he'll realize something has shifted. The person who usually texts first hasn't texted. The person who usually brings up plans hasn't brought them up. The person who usually bridges the gap has left the gap exactly where it is, and that realization creates a discomfort he can't ignore. That discomfort is the key. When you were pursuing, his discomfort was about feeling chased, and he resolved it by creating distance. But now his discomfort is about your absence, and he can only resolve it by moving toward you. The direction of his movement has reversed because the source of discomfort has reversed. You've stopped being the pressure he needs to escape and become the presence he's afraid of losing. And apart from seeing how your lack of pursuit resets his nervous system, you also need to understand that doing nothing only works when it's coming from identity, not strategy. If you're still emotionally tethered, waiting for him to notice, hoping he'll reach out, counting the days since contact, your silence isn't calm, it's charged. He can feel that charge subconsciously, and that charge has the same effect as pursuit. True attraction begins when your energy shifts into, I'm not chasing because I don't need to, I'm grounded in myself again. That's why understanding the difference between strategic silence that creates space for his pursuit and resentful withdrawal that just damages the connection requires recognizing the specific internal shifts that must happen before your external doing nothing can actually work. Without these internal shifts, your silence will feel like punishment to him rather than peace, and punishment triggers more avoidance, not less. The women who successfully use this approach aren't just changing their behavior, they're changing their entire relationship to his patterns. Comment detach, and I'll reveal the 3 specific internal shifts that must happen before doing nothing works, and exactly how to know whether your silence is creating healthy space or just creating a different kind of toxic dynamic that pushes him away for good. Number 3, it removes the threat of emotional responsibility. What if the reason avoidants resist commitment isn't because they don't want you, but because they experience emotional responsibility as a threat? And when you don't demand closeness, they can voluntarily choose it, and that choice is what creates attachment instead of resistance. When you pursue connection, ask for more or express needs, the avoidant experiences it as obligation. Even if your request is completely reasonable, his nervous system translates it as, I have to do something I'm not ready for. That sense of have to triggers his resistance. He's not resisting you specifically. He's resisting the feeling of being required to give something he doesn't feel capable of giving. But when you do nothing, you remove the obligation. There's no demand to meet, no expectation to fulfill, no responsibility to carry. And in that absence of pressure, something interesting happens. He can consider closeness without the automatic resistance that comes with feeling forced. He can think about reaching out because he wants to, not because you're making him feel guilty for not doing so. Think of it like the difference between being told to do the dishes and choosing to do them yourself. When someone demands it, even if you were about to do it anyway, the demand creates resistance. Your autonomy feels threatened. But when no one's asking and you choose it freely, the same action feels completely different. It's voluntary. It's yours. And voluntary actions create positive associations, while obligated actions create resentment. This is why avoidants can seem so contradictory. They resist closeness when it's offered or requested, but sometimes initiate it when there's no pressure. It's not that they don't want intimacy, it's that they can only access their desire for intimacy when it doesn't come with the threat of obligation. Your doing nothing removes that threat and allows their genuine desire to surface without the defensive resistance that usually blocks it. From what I've seen, this is one of the hardest concepts for women to accept because it feels like you're giving up your right to have needs. But it's not about pretending you don't have needs. It's about recognizing that trying to get an avoidant to meet your needs through pressure creates a dynamic where he'll resist even if he wants to give you what you're asking for. By removing the pressure, you create space where he can choose to meet your needs from genuine desire rather than obligation, and that choice is what creates sustainable change. The shift happens when he realizes that being close to you doesn't mean being trapped by endless demands, that you're not going to require constant emotional labor he doesn't have capacity for, that choosing connection with you doesn't mean signing up for overwhelming responsibility. When those fears are removed, the part of him that actually wants connection can emerge without being overridden by his defense mechanisms. Number 4, space becomes associated with your value, not their fear. While most avoidants associate space with their need to escape overwhelming connection, doing nothing reconditions that association. When you're peaceful in distance, they stop associating you with overwhelm and start associating space with missing someone valuable. Typically, when an avoidant creates distance, your reaction reinforces his belief that connection equals pressure. You text asking if everything's okay, you express hurt about his withdrawal, you try to pull him back in, and every one of those responses confirms his narrative. See, this is why I need space, because when I get close, people become demanding and I feel suffocated. But when you do nothing in response to his distance, when you're genuinely okay whether he's close or far, it rewrites that narrative. He takes space expecting the usual reaction, but it doesn't come. Instead, there's just calm. There's just your life continuing peacefully without him at the center of it. And that unexpected calm creates cognitive dissonance. His old story about why he needs space doesn't fit the reality anymore. Think of it like Pavlov's dogs. If every time he creates distance, you react with emotional intensity, he becomes conditioned to associate distance with relief from that intensity. But if every time he creates distance, there's just peaceful silence and your obvious well-being, he becomes conditioned to associate distance with something else entirely, the absence of someone valuable. The relief he expected doesn't come. Instead, there's just the reality that you're not available anymore. This reconditions his entire relationship to space. Space stops being relief from pressure and becomes time without someone I actually want to be around. That shift is profound because it's not conscious. His nervous system is learning a new pattern. Distance used to mean safety from overwhelm. Now distance means missing something good. That neurological rewiring is what changes his behavior long term. Pay attention to what happens when he returns from his space. If you've been chasing, he returns with relief that the pressure is over and often creates more distance soon after. But if you've done nothing, he returns with curiosity about where you've been and what you've been doing. He returns seeking connection rather than fearing it. That's the difference between behavior modification through pressure and genuine desire emerging from a reconditioned nervous system. The key is that your peace during his absence has to be real. If you're just white-knuckling it and seething inside, he'll feel that energy when he returns and the old pattern will reassert itself. But if you've genuinely used his absence to reconnect with yourself, your friends, your passions, and you're actually in a good place when he surfaces again, he encounters something his nervous system doesn't know how to resist. A person who's genuinely fine with or without him. Number 5, you break their pattern of expecting punishment. Here's what most women don't understand about avoidance and withdrawal. Most avoidants expect anger when they pull back. They're braced for emotional consequences that justify their distance, but your calm silence confuses and attracts them because it doesn't fit their defensive script. Avoidants have often learned through past relationships that withdrawing leads to conflict. You pull away, she gets upset, there's drama, accusations, emotional intensity, and in some way, that predictable response reinforces his avoidance because it proves his narrative. See? People can't handle my need for space. This is why I have to protect myself. The emotional punishment he expects becomes part of the pattern. He withdraws, you react, he feels justified in his withdrawal, the cycle continues. Even though he doesn't consciously want conflict, his nervous system is prepared for it. It's familiar, it fits his understanding of how relationships work. He knows how to handle anger and accusations, he just withdraws more, the script is set. But when you do nothing, when there's no anger, no pursuit, no emotional fallout, you break the script entirely. He pulls back, expecting the usual response, and it doesn't come. Instead, there's just calm. Just your life continuing. Just his absence creating space but no drama. And that unexpected response creates confusion in his system that's more powerful than any confrontation could be. Think of it like a child who misbehaves expecting to get yelled at. When the yelling comes, they know what to do. Shut down, get defensive, wait it out. But when there's no yelling, just calm consequences and a parent who's clearly fine but no longer engaging the same way, the child actually has to confront their behavior rather than the parent's reaction to it. Avoidants are similar. Your calm silence forces them to confront their own distance rather than your reaction to it. This confusion is what creates the opening for change. He can't run from your anger because there is no anger. He can't justify his distance as protecting himself from your emotional intensity because there is no intensity. He's left with just the reality of his own choice to create distance and the consequences of that distance. Your absence. And that reality is harder to avoid than any confrontation would be. And this is going to sound crazy, but sometimes the most attractive thing you can be to an avoidant is confusing. When you don't react the way they expect, when you don't fit the pattern of previous partners who chased and punished their withdrawal, you become psychologically interesting. Their brain has to work to understand you. And that mental engagement, that trying to figure out why you're not reacting as expected, creates a form of pursuit they initiate rather than resist. Number 6. You signal high self-worth without saying a word. While words can claim self-worth, behavior reveals it, and doing nothing communicates more powerfully than any conversation could. I respect myself too much to chase inconsistent energy, and I don't need you to validate my value. Avoidants are attracted to self-worth because it's what they struggle with internally. Despite appearing independent and self-sufficient, most avoidants have deep-seated beliefs about their own inadequacy. When they encounter someone who genuinely values themselves, who doesn't need external validation to feel worthy, it's magnetic. Not because they consciously seek that quality, but because their nervous system recognizes something they wish they possessed. When you do nothing in response to his inconsistency, you're demonstrating self-respect through action. You're showing that your peace is more valuable than his attention, that your energy is too precious to waste chasing someone who isn't choosing you clearly, that you understand your worth isn't determined by his availability. Every day you don't chase, you're making a statement about who you are and what you require. Think of it like someone walking away from a bad business deal. They don't have to explain why they're walking away. They don't have to convince the other party of their worth. They just know the terms don't work for them, and they leave. That confidence, that clarity about their own value is inherently attractive. It signals that they have options, that they know what they deserve, that they're not desperate. This is completely different from playing hard to get, which is strategic behavior designed to manipulate his interest. Doing nothing from a place of genuine self-worth isn't a strategy. It's a natural consequence of respecting yourself. You're not withdrawing to make him chase. You're withdrawing because chasing him would violate your own standards. That authenticity is what he responds to, not the tactic. From what I've seen, avoidants can sense the difference between a woman who's doing nothing as manipulation and a woman who's doing nothing because she genuinely knows her value. The first still has desperate energy underneath the silence. The second has peaceful certainty. And peaceful certainty is what creates attraction because it signals that you're not just playing a game, you've actually moved on emotionally unless he steps up. The paradox is that the less you need his validation, the more he wants to give it. When your worth is clearly not contingent on his attention, His attention becomes something he wants to give rather than something you're trying to take. That shift transforms the entire dynamic from you pursuing reluctant affection to him pursuing someone who doesn't need him to prove their value. Number 7. Their imagination fills the space. Here's what most women don't realize about how avoidants process emotion. Avoidants fall through reflection, not conversations. They need space to think, to process, to imagine, and your absence becomes their emotional mirror where they finally see what they're losing. When you're constantly present, constantly available, constantly initiating connection, there's no space for him to miss you. There's no gap for his imagination to fill. He doesn't have to wonder what you're doing, who you're with, whether you're thinking about him, whether you're moving on. You've answered all those questions through your consistent pursuit. And in answering them, you've removed the mystery that would force him to think about you. But when you do nothing, when you create genuine space through your absence, his mind has nothing to do but fill that space. Where is she? What is she thinking? Why hasn't she reached out? Is she okay? Is she losing interest? Is she seeing someone else? The questions multiply because there are no answers. And in trying to answer those questions himself, he has to engage with his feelings about you in a way he never had to when you were always available. Think of it like the difference between having a song playing constantly in the background versus hearing silence and realizing you miss the song. When the music is always there, you tune it out, you don't appreciate it, you don't even really hear it anymore. But when it stops and there's silence, that's when you notice what you had. That's when you realize you actually liked having it around. Your absence is the silence that makes him notice what the constant music of your presence prevented him from appreciating. This is especially powerful for avoidants because they process emotions internally and slowly. They can't access their feelings in real time during interactions. They need distance and solitude to understand what they actually feel. Your pursuit prevents that process. Your absence enables it. And in that space of absence, without your energy to react to, they finally have to sit with their own feelings about losing you. The imagination is more powerful than reality for creating urgency. When you're present, he knows exactly where you are and what you're doing. There's no urgency to secure your attention because he has it. But when you're absent, his imagination creates scenarios that reality never would. Maybe you're moving on. Maybe you're losing interest. Maybe you're realizing you deserve better. Those imagined possibilities create pressure that your actual presence never could. From what I've seen, this is why no contact or doing nothing often produces results that years of trying to communicate never did. Not because avoidants are perverse or illogical, but because they literally need space to access their feelings. The reflection that happens in your absence reveals truths that all your words while present couldn't communicate. Sometimes the most powerful message you can send is the one you don't say at all. The message of your absence that forces them to confront what your presence allowed them to take for granted.